The UConn women have some questions about their starting lineup. We haven't even played a game yet, but we're going to talk about Serah Williams, Jana El Alfy, Ashlynn Shade, and KK Arnold. The questions surrounding those four players on the Hoopscat.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome into the Hoopscat Pod. I am your host, Mark Sinetto. With me, as always, on Friday is my friend T. Baker. Look, we are the home for all things UConn women's and men's basketball on the Big East Energy Network. Today, we're diving into a couple of different names that could shape not just UConn's future for this season, but the following years to come, and a little bit of college basketball landscape as a whole. Obviously, without T earlier this week, I talked about how Serah and AZ are essentially the keys and how they develop. Even little tweaks to their game could be the difference between a perfect season and maybe a stumble in the tournament, and essentially a championship or bust type season with how talented this roster is. So we're going to talk about not necessarily the players like the others. We're going to talk about players that could make a huge leap in their game. But before I get to T and ask him some of my first question, how can you support the show if you're not a big sponsor and you just want to help us out and put some money towards, our operating expenses, everything that we do at Big East Energy Network and Big Energy Media Pods? Super thanks is down below. That's just a YouTube. You can pay us through that. You can do Big East Energy on Cash App or even Zelle, bigeastenergy@gmail.com. And if you're a football fan, just watched football last night with my wife, subscribe to our new Big Football Energy channel on YouTube. I think we have like 14 or 15 subscribers. Pump those numbers up so we can kind of have a dual threat there. All right. So, T, these players, in particular Serah Williams, who transferred in from Wisconsin, they're not just kind of like role players, and I know everyone plays a role, but they're not just, complementary players. These are players between Serah, between Jana, Ashlynn, and KK that can really make or break UConn season outside of the two stars in Serah and AZ. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the players, we're talking about Serah Williams, the one transfer out of the four we're talking about today. And then we got Ashlynn Shade, KK Arnold, and Jana El Alfy, who all came in as freshmen. So, just a nod to kind of the way that rosters are constructed and the way that these pieces came together. These are players who are stars on their own. And that's typically a problem that UConn has, a quote problem, where there's just so much talent. Players who are stars on their previous teams were, big fishes in small ponds in some cases, and now are competing for minutes on a really stacked elite roster. So, starting with Jana El Alfy, I think she's a player who has had such incredible hype from Geno coming in, she's one of those players that can do some really special things here, but missed her freshman season to injury. Last season was a consistent post presence and stepped up in some big moments, but also showed some growing edges. And I think this year we'll kind of see a little bit more of the player she can become. But that's a question. Is she in the starting lineup with some of these other pieces? And is she comfortable in a coming off the bench role?
Yeah, I think if you had to talk about the players that we've mentioned and I mentioned in the previous episode, kind of going forward, I think Jana is likely going to be the one that kind of, to me, she's going to be like this year's Ice Brady, because Ice took a kind of a backseat this year to Jana, to Serah and others, and even Morgan Shelley at some parts in the year, where trying to be more of a team player and realize that either they're better than you or they're just playing better than you at the time. So there could be a scenario where Jana does get her minutes restricted, but it doesn't hide the fact that she was a major contributor into why they won a national championship last year, I think, and why they'll likely be in the running again this year. So I think no matter what, I think who starts, it gets a little overblown. It's more about, the quality minutes that you get. Like, who does Geno trust down the stretch? Even if he doesn't start Jana, he's seen her do it. He hasn't seen Serah Williams do it in a big spot yet. So that could be the kind of the pitch to her to kind of be like, look, don't take too much stock in if you don't start this year. Do you think that could be part of it?
I think that's absolutely part of it. I mean, Geno kind of gets that trust from players of like, whether you like it or not, hopefully in the end of this, you realize that this was the right step for you and helped you grow and develop. And I think we've seen that with Ice Brady, who's another player who could very well be a starter, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's so many pieces here. And I think what the opportunity that's presenting itself is players who can kind of give their maximum effort in maybe a smaller amount of minutes than having to play maximum minutes and be stretched. And just its injury insurance. We've seen so many injuries in women's college basketball. UConn in the past 5-6 years has had just miserable injury luck before last year, where they sort of stabilized and then won a national championship. But having the ability to rotate talent in and out at all the positions and sort of like put together the jigsaw of talent is a really good problem to have. And who starts, who gets minutes, I think those things will be kind of worked out as the season goes on. And it might be different lineups against different teams. So that's just a luxury this team has, because we haven't even mentioned Ayanna Patterson, another big
Right.
back in the rotation.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I know she hasn't played in a while, but Caroline Ducharme is back too. Like, it's like, it's an embarrassment of riches. And I know I've said that like a million times. People are probably sick of me hearing that, or hearing me say that. And then you have Gandhi Malumamel, who's a 6'6" freshman, definitely a project, but an absolute, freak of an athlete. So they're just loaded in so many spots. That's why we're trying to, here we are. We can go on tangents because of how much talent they have. And we were like, hey, let's talk about 2 bigs and 2 guards. And we've already mentioned like everybody else in the show. But let's transition it. And let's talk about the guards. I think this is the biggest thing. I think the biggest question mark that people have, at least from the comments I get and from if you talk to people that are in the know, they're excited about where this team can be, but there's no Caitlin Chen that essentially is, the calming force that's like a senior or a grad student that's a point guard. You have KK Arnold, who's very capable. I want to be very clear on that. But she's not the general coming in from, transfer like Caitlin was, who you don't expect much from, but you kind of know that she's steady. KK is kind of all over the place, which is what I love about her. And then you have Khalees Fisher, who's a freshman who could play point, but that's not what they had last year. So should we care? Is that really a big problem? I mean, is that more like minor? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think I just see it as the natural evolution of a player who goes through a UConn program that has a system in place. I think there's intentionality built into like upperclassmen kind of set the tone, and then the underclassmen rise to that occasion. That's kind of been the tradition of UConn since Geno and CD have been coaches. I just think, KK Arnold sort of could come off the bench and be a star or be a starter in her freshman season and just deliver in those ways. But she always had the security of players like Nika Mule, Paige Beckers, Caitlin Chen. Like she had that to fall back on. So she didn't have to carry both necessarily like the game and the emotional weight of leading the team. And I think that's a different role this year, but I think she's ready for it. Like she was a starter as a freshman. Last season, we saw her just bring poise and energy. Every time she was on the court, she was a difference maker. So she has that in her. I think it's just, okay, now you've had 2 years to learn from these steady players. And now it's your turn to be one of those leaders.
What do you think about Ashlynn Shade and her ability to make a leap now as a junior? Big East Freshman of the Year. It's been to multiple Final Fours, a national champion, obviously. You mentioned pre-show that she has the ability to potentially be an All-American. How do you feel about her kind of development so far under Geno Auriemma?
I mean, and last year she was also the 6th woman of the year in the Big East. So she's gotten Big East honors 2 years in a row. As a sophomore, she was averaging about 7.7 points. But her shooting percentage is 48% from the field, above 40% from 3. So I think it's really about efficiency. And when there's so many other threats on the court, and then you have Ashlynn Shade that can hit a corner 3 as a dagger every once in a while, which we saw in the South Carolina game just before the half in the title game, like it can be demoralizing for teams. So I think she's like that sneaky scorer who can just take over a game offensively. Say AZ's having a bad night, or the guards just aren't producing offensively. Ashlynn Shade can hit threes in a row and turn the game around, right? She has that offensive firepower within her, and that's just a threat that you don't see coming sometimes. And I think that's what's so unique about her. And she's a scrappy player, you know. She's one of those Geno Auriemma recruits that he loves, that's going to dive for the ball, like has the like legacy of Shea Ralph in her blood, you know, like just a gritty, tough guard. And I love it. So listen, I think the sky's really the limit for Ashlynn Shade. I think people sleep on her a little bit, but the way that she was freshman of the year, the Big East, 6th woman of the year, like she has the talent and the numbers show it. And again, another player who just as a junior upperclassman now can step into really a star role.
Yeah, and it's amazing, like when you have the freedom as an upperclassman, like how much your game kind of can transform, right? You don't, and this is, you know, like when you're, and I feel you're going to see the same thing with AZ, you know, not having to, not like she ever deferred to Paige, but you know, like when there's a hierarchy, like whether it's UConn or other teams, and no one really wants to rock the boat when you have, you know, a 12-time national championship coach and all these fantastic players who are number one. All these players were like the best player in their state, right? So they're all like big fish, and now they come to a even bigger pond, and you know, like they just have to adjust, right? And I think it's the ultimate adjustment this year, because as we transition to someone like Serah Williams, she's never played on a team like this. She's been on Wisconsin teams that have been decent, but they haven't been, you know, NCAA tournament teams. They were, you know, typically not that great in the Big Ten, but she's been great. She's been a great defensive player. She's been a double-double machine. How do you see her transition to Geno Auriemma's system?
I mean, it's a case study in my head is just the way we saw Sarah Strong come into UConn last year, like a player who just is always the best player on the court, can drive a team to success single-handedly, but had just talent around her at all those different positions. And it allows a freedom to do what you do best, right? Like if the defense is focused on AZ Fudd about to hit a 3 or Sarah Strong driving to the basket, like Serah Williams is going to have so many opportunities for open shots. And if she's doubled or tripled in the post, she can kick it out and get assists. And like, there's just really an endless number seemingly of rotations that she could fit into and be successful in, but she doesn't have to carry it. I think sometimes stars on teams that don't have as much talent have to carry the team and have to always be the one in those moments to turn it around. And in some games, she might have to be that person, but she certainly won't always be relied on. And that creates a little bit of levity in the way you can play, allows you to bring creativity to your game and really just flourish.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. And because it just popped into my head because, you know, with Serah Williams, when she transferred to UConn, there were others obviously in the mix, including LSU and North Carolina, even Ohio State. And I wanted to ask you about, so random about Ohio State, because are they making a larger push in terms of investment, in terms of kind of making their women's basketball more top tier? Because even our friend EJ Arrow, who does his On Target show, had Michaela on, and Ohio State is, you know, one of her choices, right? You know, she's a top 4 along with South Carolina, USC, and others. And she's a 4 or 5 star-ish player. And like, I just feel like, you know, UConn's playing them next year. Is that I talked about maybe a perfect season in the last show. Is that a team that could potentially give them some fits? Because I don't know, like to me, I just see Ohio State women's basketball more involved with almost every aspect of the game at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the era of women's basketball we're in, and it's exciting. I think in the past, you could sort of see a team like UConn or Tennessee kind of steamroll the competition, and that's why I talked about a couple episodes ago, like that 2016 team. I don't think we'll ever see it again, because there won't just be that like sort of talent disparity. And like, don't get me wrong, there was talent in that Final Four. You had, like, I think Kelsey Plum played in that Final Four. Like, there were talented players, but it was more concentrated at the top teams. Now there's talent everywhere, and students who are looking for opportunities to play basketball are thinking about a lot of different things. It's not just about the coaching or the program on the court. It's about so many other factors. So, I mean, I was listening to Sue Bird's podcast, Bird's Eye View, and she was talking with Nafisa Collier and sort of said like, yeah, I don't get how Geno's gotten people to come to Storrs, Connecticut all these years, right? Because it really has been about the basketball. But when you begin to bring in the NIL, the revenue sharing, like being in markets where you have proximity to other opportunities becomes a bigger conversation. So Ohio State is a massive football brand, a massive sports brand. So aligning yourself with that as a women's basketball player makes increasingly more sense from a marketing perspective. And that's what the new recruiting landscape looks like. So these teams, I mean, UConn isn't a monolith in the talent that they can concentrate. And I think we're going to see that parity continue to grow.
Yeah, and if you just take a glance at their roster, they're big. They have a really big and talented group. A lot of big guards. They have a couple smaller guards, like every women's team that are 5'8", 5'7", but a lot of 6'1" guards. A lot of big 6'4", 6'6" at the power forward and center spots. So that'll be an interesting matchup. Just as an aside, when they play them this year, and going forward, we'll see. They got Chloe Kitz's sister Kylie went just transferred there, so. She's 6'4" power forward. So yeah, they're as another group, the team that I cover here, they're coming, right? And it's going to be an interesting battle next year.
And it can happen more quickly. I think that's the thing.
Course.
Like we saw that with TCU this past season, making it to the Sweet 16 Elite Eight. Yeah. They were able to get Haley Van Lith. They were able to get players and talent right away. This year we're seeing it again. They have Olivia Miles. Like, they could be a team that's disruptive, right? They are able to get talent quickly in the transfer portal. So teams aren't going to have these like 3 to 5 year runs of dominance as they typically have, except for those outliers like UConn and South Carolina. And that's what makes them so incredibly elite. But that is so hard to do. And that's what people forget.
Do you think there's going to be burnout eventually in women's college basketball in terms of the coaching? Because famously, we just, our good friend Ian O'Connor, who wrote a book with Dan Hurley that's coming out later this month. That's been leaked that he considered retiring last year because one of the quotes was, "Am I a basketball coach or am I a banker?" Yeah. So like, I from a women's game perspective, especially with Geno, I think because he's got his team set up for the next few years, I think he probably doesn't care about NIL and just has to do it. But that's just my guess, right? Yeah. But do you think like the Dawn Staley's of the world, can't think of her name because all I think of is the burner name for the LSU coach, and I can't think
Kim Mulkey.
Kim Mulkey. Yeah. I was thinking of the burner name. It's what is that? Skim Mulkey. Yeah. Skim Mulkey. Yeah, but like Kim Mulkey, like some of these older kind of old school coaches, do you see them kind of being like, all right, man, like I'm done?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was at Geno's record-breaking win, I forget the number, where he became the winningest coach in Division I, Rebecca Lobo took the mic and said, "We will never see this happen again." And she said it confidently because there's never going to be a coach. And I think Geno joked about it post-game that wants to deal with this shit for the amount of time that he did, because it's a changing landscape. It's a different ball game. It's a different job. And you have to know. And that's why I think bringing in general managers, I haven't heard of UConn women bringing in a general manager, which is intriguing to me, but other programs have begun to do that on the women's side. Because there's a coach who's like dealing with the X's and O's, and you always deal with locker room dynamics and teammate stuff, but now you're dealing with contracts and money and institutional expectation. And yeah, that's going to burn you out, and it's going to get you fired sooner than it would have in the past, maybe. And that's a tough business. It's going to begin to feel, I think, like coaching professional sports. And we know that 10 years in professional sports aren't that long. So yeah, I think it's going to be a different thing. I'm sad about it, but I'm sad about a lot of things. And that's just life. I don't know.
I'm sad about a lot of things. Yeah. God, no, it's true though. Like, but I don't think there's a way to counteract it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. The cat's already out of the bag.
The money is already being invested, and that's. I feel. I mean, to reflect on college sports broadly. I mean, I'm not a big football fan, but I tuned in for Arch Manning's, game. And it made me think of the pressure that's going to be on all athletes, because not only is he carrying now, right, like his family name and the expectation of being an athlete, but he's carrying millions of dollars of investment from sponsors, from the University of Texas. And that's what's going to be replicated across all sports teams. And once you put dollar figures like, oh, this women's team paid $2 million for their roster, the expectations are going to fall from that. And sometimes rosters just aren't going to be good, no matter how much you spend. They aren't going to click, and that's just sports. But that's going to be, the stakes are going to be way higher.
You don't have to tell me I'm a Yankee fan in baseball, and they're typically one of the highest payrolls, second or first or third or whatever. And guess what? They don't win the World Series every year. So yeah. I think hopefully what fans will start to realize is that money doesn't always buy you championships.
Yeah.
It can give you a nice head start, but you do need to have the coaches in place, the infrastructure, all the things that, we've talked about whether it's investing in women's sports or just in general, right? You could have the most talented roster in all of football, basketball, baseball, but if you don't have the right pieces, if the luck doesn't fall your way, you lose, especially in a one-and-done tournament. The NCAA tournament is not like the World Series. Typically, the best team wins because
you have a bad game. Someone has the flu.
Sure,
right.
you can figure it out. You can win 7 games or 5 games or three game series, whatever it is. Most professional sports will end up doing that. I know we've kind of gone off topic, but I don't care because this is a really good conversation. Do you think we'll ever go to a place? Because I talked to Ryan Hammer, who's a college basketball analyst on the men's side, and because I'm in favor of this. If we ever get to the point where it's basically full semi-professional, we have contracts, and everything is collectively bargained, the whole deal. Do you think we'll ever get to a point where we get to relegation?
What do you mean by that?
So, like in Europe, right? You have soccer leagues, Premier Leagues. There's like 7 different Premier League soccer leagues, and they all are different tiers.
Oh,
it doesn't mean that you can't eventually be in the. I don't even know what the top league is because I'm not a soccer fan. But I'm a fan of the structure because it gives you hope. If you're a small club, like look at the stupid documentary series that Ryan Reynolds and what's the dude from Philadelphia? I can't think of. Welcome to Wrexham. That was almost like a fictional Ted Lasso program that people laughed at, and it eventually got up to like the highest or second highest league in all of European football. So to me, like if the cat's already out of the bag, let's just do some add more cats to it. Let's figure it out, right? You know what I mean? Like I just think it's one of those things where just think about it from like a women's perspective. Just on the women's side, the Big East, all of the P4 teams are kind of on a different level than mid majors, right? So if you were to have kind of almost like a tournament that's like the tournament, like where it's like the 64 best teams, not the 64 invited teams with automatic qualifiers. And then you had another tournament where it was like, you're basically in the mid-major world.
Yeah.
But you can get to that high league. You just have to invest and you just have to get better players. And it would for me, it would be like, there's an accountability there.
Yeah.
That it's just not just because I'm Ohio State, I get to, be good in women's basketball. No, you actually have to invest in doing well.
Yeah.
I think that's where I want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think anything's on the table. I don't think we are yet to feel the impact of just like how different this season is going to feel because of all these dynamics. And who knows what it's going to look like in the future. I'm open to any thoughtful conversations about it because I think ultimately, like for me, I think what is challenging about it is like I think we've lost some of the like March Madness magic because we're not going to see teams upset big teams anymore because they have all the talent and all the resources. Like it's kind of a different playing field. You might see it here and there, but it's going to be less common. And I think that just changes the product. And that's why if it's a pivot to like relegation and a different divisions, like I'm open to all of it, whatever kind of makes the product more enjoyable and hopefully makes like student athletes feel like they're not just set up for failure if they're on a team, if they can't get to a Power 4 school. So yeah, it's going to be interesting and it's going to be interesting to see where UConn falls in that. I think UConn women's basketball is a specific asset and brand in of itself, so it'll be okay in any landscape, I think. But a lot of the Big East teams, I don't know.
Last question for the day, and I just throwing all kinds of random stuff at you today, and I love it. Do you think, and it could be 3 years from now, do you think the brand of, because you mentioned it, the brand of UConn women's basketball survives Geno's retirement?
I think it survives it in the same way that the Tennessee Lady Vols survived Pat Summitt, same way that Notre Dame Fighting Irish survived Muffet McGraw. There's something, same way that Louisiana Tech women's basketball still like lights up a part of my brain. Like it's just a brand that has historical significance. So I think it'll remain. It might be different. It's definitely going to be different. But that legacy is not easy to undo. You know, there's a level of like foundational, it's like UNC men's basketball or Duke women's basketball. Like you're never going to dull that. Just because of the historical context and significance of that brand is my opinion. What do you think?
I think it'll look different. I think it could go either way. And I think what ends up happening is I listened to, because we just saw Alabama lose in the first game of the season to Florida State, and they lost Nick Saban, who's a very, very Geno-esque, right? Dominated the college football landscape. And so everyone says you don't want to be the next guy to replace or the next girl to replace a legend. But I listened to this one perspective, and I can't think of his name, so I can't give him credit, but I apologize. So this is not my thought, but I agree with it, which is no matter who you pick, that person has to be that. 99% of people feel like you don't want to be the guy or the gal who takes over, right? But there's that 1%er who's like, I want to be the guy.
Yeah,
the gal,
I'm crazy
right?
enough to believe I can do this. Yeah,
and so you want that person. So whoever it is, you need that person that's like, I'm in the top 1 of 1%. That goes, Geno who? You know what I mean? Like, that is going to respect the transition, respect the tradition, and then forge their own path. Yeah. And look, that's going to be the toughest thing, I think, for the program. If Dave Benedict is still the athletic director, I do not envy that search. Call me if you need any help, brother. I'm going to get you back on the show sometime soon. But yeah, that to me is tough. I could see them. We talked about this before, but I do think the smart play is to go with someone outside of the family. Yeah. So that you don't mix Geno wouldn't do it that way. It's like, well, I wasn't at UConn, so I don't care. You know what I mean? Like that's what you need.
I agree. I mean, I think that a fresh start is good because we saw this play out with Tennessee, right? They hired Holly Warlick, and then Kelly Jolly was her maiden name. I'm going way back in time. Kelly Harper. And those were 2 Tennessee alum with direct ties to Pat Summitt. And there was always like an emotional weight to it that felt unfair. Right. And then when they brought in Kim Caldwell, outsider, like there's a new energy now. And it's like, okay, we can put that where it was. We don't have to kind of hold on to this, like, because when you're holding on to that legacy, you're also holding on to like the grief of what was, like it'll never be that again. And aiming for that same bar is always going to be disappointing and heartbreaking, especially when it's someone in the family who there's like an emotional component to. Like it's harder to fire that person, frankly.
Yeah, and I think UConn and Dave Benedict will likely learn from the mistake of hiring Kevin Ollie after Jim Calhoun. Listen, I say mistake. He won a national championship in the second year, so like I understand. There's a lot of consternation and some tough things that went on in the KO era. So I respect Kevin Ollie. I think he's great. I think there's a lot of people that didn't really love his coaching style. So I think they learned and obviously brought in a great coach in Dan Hurley. But even if Dan Hurley hadn't won 2 national championships, it was needed to bring in kind of that new voice to kind of get away from the godfather of men's basketball in UConn and Jim Calhoun. But yeah, I think hopefully they've learned from that and, we move forward. Look, man, I really appreciate your time. I know you only got a minute left. So what are your expectations for this? Go take it all the way back to the beginning to maybe what the starting 5 looks like, and then we'll call it a day.
I mean, to me, you got KK Arnold, AZ Fudd in the backcourt. I think that I see a 3-guard rotation with Ashlynn Shade in the starting lineup to begin the season. That could change over time. And then I see Serah Williams and Sarah Strong just holding it down on the wing in the post. What about you?
I'm with you. Again, this is the one wild card, and we're going to talk about her on the next show and dedicated some time to how good she potentially can be is Blanca Quinones. Like I said to you pre-show, if she dominates preseason and she kind of shows out like Serah did at the beginning of this year, you could see Ashlynn be the odd person out, only because of the position she plays, not because of how good she can become. And it only just shows how talented this team possibly could be. But that's my only wrinkle.
A lot of good problems to have in this upcoming season.
Absolutely. All right. He's T. Baker. I'm Mark Snetto. Built a Ball. Go check it out on wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch it on. If you have Spotify Premium, you can watch him like this. Like, you don't even need to just listen to it. You can actually watch it on your phone. Apple, everywhere else. Watch it on YouTube. Check me out. I'm all over the place. I'll talk to you soon.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions.